So, yes.
Okay, I want to ask you about the personality tests that you developed for identifying a politically correct type of personality. Have you thought, or are you in the process of disseminating it for the public? And the reason I ask that is that when I think about business owners, and I know this from personal experience and from two different accounts, complaints to the Ontario Human Rights Commission, excuse me, are very expensive. So they're expensive in terms of litigation, in terms of settlement, and also in terms of damage to the reputation of the company that's brought before the commission. And if I was a business owner and I found out that there was a risk mitigation tool that was available on the cheap for me to, minimize this type of a risk, I would buy it right away. And I'm wondering, have you thought about making this available and saying, look, if you want to screen out some people who might, as a risk to your business, cause you economic damage, here's this tool. It wouldn't be against, it's not against any protected grounds in the Human Rights Code. And the other thing it would sort of, to me at least, seem to fall into your attack on on human resources people who are propagating the whole political correctness thing, because the Human Rights Code is screened into every business, right? So the way for me to sort of mitigate that is to screen out some of the people before they get into the business, and then use that screen.
Okay. So I can't answer the second part of that question with regards to screening, because it's very specific, and I don't know enough to provide a non-problematic answer to that. But I can answer the first part, which is what personality traits tilt people towards political correctness. And the fundamental answer to that is that it's trait agreeableness. So you can look that up. There's 5 canonical traits: extroversion, neuroticism, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and openness, which is the creativity dimension. And agreeable people are compassionate and polite, but they're more likely to be politically correct. Now, that's not the only predictor. Now, but the thing is that agreeableness is a very strange personality dimension. So on the disagreeable side, people tend to be self-centered and combative and brusque and rough and competitive and for themselves. And so it's actually low agreeableness is the best predictor of being incarcerated. So among the personality predictors, it's not a great predictor of being incarcerated, but it's the best one. So if people get too disagreeable, they're very hard to work with. But if they get too agreeable, then they're pushovers. But agreeableness is one of these weird dimensions where there's real price to be paid no matter where you are on the distribution. So if you screened people out using agreeableness, because that might decrease the probability that they were politically correct, you would also get rid of people who were really good at working at teams and who were good at taking care of others. So it's hard to screen without paying a bigger price for the screening than you bear when it's something that's that particular. So the fundamental predictors of political belief are conscientiousness and openness. So openness you can roughly think about as creativity, and conscientiousness you can roughly think about as dutifulness and orderliness. Okay? Conservatives are low in creativity and high in dutifulness and orderliness. So they're very hard workers, and they're very good at managing, they're very good at administration, and they're good at running things that have already been turned into machines, so to speak. The liberals are good at inventing new things, but they're not very good at running them. And so the reason that there's niches for these two different types of people, there's many different types of people, but for these two different types, is because in our society you need creative people who aren't too bounded by orderliness to invent new things, and you need conscientious people who aren't too interested in novelty to run things that already exist effectively. And so the conservatives and the liberals, they have to communicate with one another, because the conservatives have no businesses to run without the liberals, and the liberals have no one to run their businesses without the conservatives. So that's a broader answer to the question of political differentiation. Yes?
So I spent my 20s raising, I have 2 children, and I've just for the first time gone to school full time and started seeing from the first semester sociology classes teaching social constructions theory and different things that, from what I could tell around me, were being sort of taken for granted as truth. And then, so now I'm seeing that trickling down to the elementary school level where my kids are going to school.
It's actually pouring down.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
And so I'm concerned, like I'm not exactly sure what to do. In one case, a few weeks ago, I just kept my son out of school because the teacher had said, you know, this is, you know, Pink Day tomorrow, here's a link to the organization. I looked through it, it's feminism, it's transgender phobia, it's like all these things. So I'm just going to pull them out because I don't know what they're going to be talking about, but it's going to keep going, and I'm not.
Every time the schools do something with your kids that you don't agree with, keep them at home. Simple as that, and do it now, because this, like the systems that produce teachers have become pathological completely. They're indoctrination camps and nothing else. That's my estimation. And the biggest sinner is the Ontario Institute for the Studies of Education, and it should be defunded as far as I'm concerned. They don't do what they say they're going to do. They don't. There's lots of room for real research into what helps children learn faster, and there's lots of things that are known and they're not being implemented in schools because it would be difficult. Instead, children are being taught this social constructionist ideological nonsense as early as possible so that it's well set into their minds. And this is also why the bloody social constructionists are going to go after the biologists, because the thing is, they know they've lost on the scientific front. They've lost. The data are in. Humans have a nature. It's biologically determined to a great degree. That doesn't mean we don't have free will, and it doesn't mean that we aren't also socialized, because clearly we are. But because they've lost in reality, they're pushing it forward legally. And that's part of the reason why I objected to Bill C-16. The policy documents around C-16 instantiate a social constructionist and really an appallingly incoherent and naive social constructionist theory of identity into the law. So, and you know, the idea that biological sex, gender identity, gender expression, and sexual proclivity are independent, which they are not. They're not even close to independent. That's now written into the law. It's like you don't do that. You don't write quasi-scientific truths into the law. You don't have to if they're true. If they're not true, you make them law. Yeah. It's appalling that we've allowed that to happen. And so if you don't agree with what's being done with your kids, tell your kids.
I started talking about that with my almost 13-year-old
Yep.
saying, this is what you're being taught, this is what I believe, and you know, these are some options, and this is what I believe is true, rather than
Yep.
we're just hearing it as fact.
As soon as the state tells you that you can't pull your children out of school, it's immediately time to pull them out of school.
So I'm a University of Ottawa student, and a lot of my professors that I've had have spoken about their political views in any way, especially when Trump won. And lately, when the Dean of Faculty of Medicine released a statement saying that he'd rather them not talk about their political views and what they don't like whatever. I'm just wondering, what's your opinion on that? Do you think professors should not at all talk about their political views, or should they, but also encourage their students to do their own research and to...
Oh, the professors should say, look, here's what I think. And you should do absolutely everything you can to figure out why I'm wrong. That's what I tell my students. It's like, I'm going to tell you what I believe to be true. And some of that's political, because the political gets, especially in times of uncertainty, the political gets tangled up with everything. But it's the role of the professor to help the students learn how to engage in combat against those ideas. And a professor can do that if he or she is more, what would you call, is a bigger supporter of the truth that's embedded in free inquiry than they are of the truth that's embedded in their current system of thought. Now, in terms of fighting professors, that's easy. Every time a professor says something particularly stupid, record it and make a YouTube video. You know, do it properly. Do it properly. You don't want to take things out of context. That's crooked. But you have every right to reveal what you're being taught. You know, there are lots of courses now. There are lots of courses now where the rule is you can't talk about the course outside of the course because you disrupt the safe space. It's like, really? Really? Really, it's unbelievable. That's the first course that you record and put online, because there's no excuse for that. There's absolutely no excuse for that. So hold the professors accountable for what they say. But you also have to do that in class. Somebody commented about 4chan. Yeah, well, the problem with posting things anonymously is that you're not telling the truth if you're posting them anonymously. Right? What you're doing is letting the fettered part of you have free voice. Now, that may be useful, but it's not the same as the truth. You're not uttering the truth unless you're willing to stand up for it. Right? And so in a class, it's like, stand up and object, and you'll get swatted. And then you'll sit down and think, okay, I got swatted that time, I better get my arguments in order next time. And so then you take your stupid arguments and you go home and you retool them a bit, and then you stand up again and you say, okay, I've got a better thing to say. And you keep doing that, knowing you're going to get swatted to begin with. And if you get nowhere with the discussion, like yesterday on the front page of the Toronto Sun, if I remember correctly, there was a story about a Ryerson student who proposed writing a paper on the wage gap. Which on the non-existent wage gap, roughly speaking. Because, look, women and men do not make the same amount of money. But they do tend to make the same amount of money in the same jobs. In fact, if the men and women are under 30, the women actually make more money than the men. But there is a wage gap, but there's a multitude of reasons for it. To call it, the reason is patriarchy. It's like, really? Really? That's your argument? What's the reason for everything? Why are little children suffering? It's patriarchy. Well, great, great. Try to implement that in a manner that's going to make a positive difference. You know, it's so boneheaded, it's just beyond belief. But so the thing that you do is the same thing that student did. She talked to her sister made a video, and now it's on the front page of the Toronto Sun. It's like, you got access to power in the modern age. Put something tendentious on YouTube and make a reasonable argument. Man, you'll have 1,000 people watching it in no time flat. Then you'll end up in this library.
Just something about you're talking about the anonymity of 4chan, about how you should speak your views and have them attached to your name. But the problem I've seen with that was, I'm a student at Queen's University, and you probably heard about the controversy surrounding the quote-unquote racist party. What happened after that was there's a group of Queen students on Facebook, and it sparked a huge discussion, which I thought was great. There was communication, but what happened was people went through the group and screenshotted what people said, stalked people on Facebook, and sent their things that they said to their jobs, demanding that person was fired.
Yeah. Same thing just happened at McMaster. Yeah. It's happening a lot.
And even stuff such like in the States, there was a writer from Breitbart who also went to university, and he said he got an email because they wanted to host, Milo Yiannopoulos, also Christina Hoff Sommers.
Yeah.
They got an email from a professor talking, essentially slandering these students and saying that back in his day they broke the bones and bashed in the brains of fascists.
Yeah.
So while not specifically advocating violence, implying that it's okay. And it's
desirable even.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And even after the Berkeley riots, there were 5 articles in the Berkeley school newspaper encouraging the riots. So it seems like not only is there an indoctrination of only leftist ideas in universities, but there's a discouragement, not just with words and counter ideas, but with violence, with shame, and with financial penalties in the universities. And I'm just curious as to if you have any ideas on how to fight that, because it seems all that speaking out is going to do is get you.
Okay, so this is what I would say about that. First of all, be careful with what you write. Don't write things you don't believe, and write them carefully. And write them knowing that you're not to write them unless you're willing to stand behind them. And then understand that if you're called to stand behind them, that is in fact how you will become educated. That's what you're in university for. It's to become educated. You might not get educated in your classes. Maybe that's not how people get educated in university anymore. But if you have something to say, and you say it carefully, and you've thought it through, and then you're willing to stand behind it, you will come out of that educated, and it'll be worth it. So having the courage of your convictions is the same as having courage. It's the same thing, and there isn't anything better that you can have going forward through your life than courage. If you're called upon to fight for what you believe in, then learn to fight, because then you'll be able to fight. And with any luck, you'll be able to fight with your words. And if you can do that, you are so much more powerful than people who fight with their fists that there isn't even any comparison. So don't say things casually, right? It's not the time for that. If you have something to say on Facebook, say something you'll stand behind, and then take the damn consequences. Don't do it stupidly. Don't make unnecessary enemies. Don't shoot off your mouth. But if you have something to say that you have to say, you either say it or you corrupt your soul. So you take your choice. And I wouldn't recommend it, because that's the thing that you rely on to get you through life. And if it's corrupted, nothing will help you.
I'm not claiming to be intelligent enough to have properly interpreted your talk. I felt like at the end you were talking about overcoming nihilism and otherwise tempting ideologies. But it pains me to say it, but at first glance your story is a little bit sad when you first look at it. You're a university professor who has commented on how universities seem to be doing a lot of harm rather than good nowadays. And since you were talking about overcoming nihilism, I'd like to ask you, in the face of your critics following you to the ends of the earth, even to an innocent talk about creativity, how do you maintain hope?
Oh, that's easy. That's easy. You know how many hate letters I've received?
400,000?
3. Really, I'm telling you the truth. I've received like no hate letter. Even the ones I received were like, as far as hate letters go, they weren't really very spectacular. You know, none. It's unbelievable. And I've received thousands of letters of support. So that makes it really easy to be hopeful. And if I look at the comments on my YouTube videos, there's like 300 to 1 in favor of what I'm saying. It's like, I'm not sure I have any enemies. Well, the ones I have are noisy, but they also don't understand what I'm doing. Well, some of them do. Some of them do, but not very many. So I don't really regard them as enemies anyways. I mean, they're outside right now freezing to death in the mineys. It's like, you know, it's too bad. But I mean, it was rough on me, mostly because it was rough on my family for about the first 2 months after this happened, because my job was genuinely in jeopardy. And also, you know, I was being beset by critics who are all telling me how to improve, by the way, because that's what critics do. Really, that is what they do. And so it's actually a great gift if you have a lot of people who are telling you why you're wrong, because maybe you're wrong, and they'll tell you, and you can fix it. And I had lots of people who were on my side also telling me why I was wrong. But after about 2 months, when the university backed off, and they backed off in as friendly a way as you would expect a somewhat, what would you call it, blind, massive institution to manage. You know, there's 60,000 students at the University of Toronto, so you can't expect like an overweight hippopotamus to dance like a ballerina. It isn't going to do that. But we settled things, and the students were very welcoming to me, and like this is the sort of adventure that I was telling you about earlier. It's like there's nothing but hope in it. Like we're in a chaotic time. Keck and all that, you know, we're in a chaotic time, and out of chaotic times great things can arise. And so
confident that your thoughts will prevail?
No, I'm not confident, because we are in a chaotic time and things could go in any direction. But I certainly have no reason not to be hopeful. It's like, it's an adventure. It's an adventure. So we'll see what happens, and I'm hoping that it'll turn out better. So that's hope.
The library says they want us out at 5, so I'm going to take 2 more questions, and then I'm going to thank Dr. Peterson. Okay, now that person is getting his head pointed at.
Okay.
I
think of some light flowing in your way, so I was completely blinded.
Ah, okay.
Earlier when you were discussing Genesis and this idea of creating order out of chaos, perhaps from the perspective of the woodland animal, the rock, or the raindrop, they see order in that which already exists. There's a system to that, but we see it as chaos. So maybe there are certain cultures where we look to them and them into us. We see chaos, they see chaos back. And to a certain extent, through trade or communication, we can learn how to get along. But sometimes, either between those societies or within our own society, we reach fundamental issues that we cannot reconcile.
Yep.
Now, back when God was still alive, we could use violence to see who was right, and that was seen as a righteous way of figuring out the truth. But now, since God has died, and some groups or cultures or individuals feel that it's okay to use violence when, through the marketplace of ideas, they haven't been able to convince the other side, what does the side that believes in the rules and not resorting to violence and continually trying to put on the videos and talk and come to places like this, what do we do when the other side is willing to go through whatever lengths to embarrass people to?
You go to greater lengths, but you do it differently.
Without falling into Dostoevsky.
You make yourself strong. Make yourself strong. Make your society strong. You make yourself strong enough so that people don't mess with you. Or maybe strong enough so they want to join you. That's the thing to do. Like, the idea that there's morality and harmlessness is absolutely insane. If you're going to fight evil, you have to have a touch of evil in you. It should be something that you've mastered. I mean, you should have learned that from Harry Potter, right? He could, really, he could speak to snakes. And the reason that he could overcome Voldemort is because he'd been touched by evil. Like, there isn't a man that's worthy of his salt that hasn't been touched by evil. You should be one mean son of a bitch, and someone that some people are absolutely terrified of, if necessary. And then you won't have to use it. And then you can use it for good. But if you're just flabby and harmless, and you just get out of the way when someone pushes you, it's like, it's an invitation to be pushed. In fact, you should be pushed, because what the hell good are you? So, really, it's like, put yourself together so you're intimidating, and then make your society intimidating and strong, and then people will leave you the hell alone. So, or they will join you, and that's even better. So, there's no morality in weakness.
The gentleman on the stairs?
Hi there. You were talking about group identity, and basically it needs to be tight enough that it actually keeps us together. If it's too tight, it excludes. Do you have any faith in an idea of like a humanistic group identity? And if not, what do you think the best foundation should be? Should it be religious?
Well, what do you mean by humanistic?
Like humanism is an idea that your group identity is on our species, and that everyone is a part of your group. Though I feel like it might not be strong, actually practical, while it sounds nice. And if not, what do you think the foundation should be? Value-based, religious, national, constitutional, or some combination of?
Well, the identity has to be multidimensional. I mean, there's a social element to identity, which is of crucial importance. Identity is something that you negotiate with other people. So it's a negotiated game. And you have to have a social identity, because if you're going to live with other people, you have to share an identity with them. So, but as I indicated in my talk, I think the proper ordering of the identity is that the social identity serves the individual identity, and vice versa. But the individual identity is what's paramount, because it's the living force from which the social emerges and is continually repaired and renewed. And I think the problem with humanism, roughly speaking, is that it's not grounded deeply enough either in history or in biology. And we need things to be grounded. See, one of the questions I was trying to answer when I was sorting out, for my own purposes, the conflict between the Soviet Union and its communitarianism and the individualistic West, is this merely a matter of opinion? You know, we believe one thing, they believe the other. Who's to say what's right? Or is there something deeper at stake? And what I discovered, I believe, but not that I was the only person to discover it, because I certainly wasn't, is that the fundamental axioms of Western civilization are not mere opinions. They're expressions of the deepest level of being. And we need to be aligned with them, because otherwise we're not aligned with the structure of reality, for that matter. And I think that's, once you understand, roughly speaking, the manner in which these things are portrayed symbolically, then I think that becomes quite clear. I mean, you know, the oldest story that we have is that people are in an orderly state and everything falls apart and they've plunged into the underworld. And then they fight some tremendous battle down there or die, and then they come out triumphant. It's like, well, is that a true story? It's like, well, that's happened to every one of you in your life. It happens all the time. You know, it's that you're aiming at something predicated on a sense of who you are, and you fail. Or the person doesn't love you, or they betray you, or abandon you, or you don't get the raise that you thought you deserved, or a friend betrays you, or you betray yourself. It's like the bottom falls out. Well, you're somewhere when the bottom falls out. Things fall apart. Now you're in chaos. How do you orient yourself in chaos? Well, you have to be careful, because hell is a suburb of chaos. It's where you end up when the chaos makes you bitter and resentful and then murderous and then genocidal. It's hell, and you can end up there. It's very hard to get out once you're there. These are places that are more real than real. And we have ancient stories of the voyage to the underworld and then the triumphant reemergent. That's the phoenix, right? And so, unless your system of belief, let's say, which is more the system that orients yourself in the world, is predicated on these fundamental narrative structures, which are in turn an expression both of our biology and our social being, they cannot possibly survive. It has to be aligned all the way up, from the deepest material reaches to the highest spiritual plane. Nothing but alignment. And I think you can feel that too in your own life as things align themselves and come together. You know, I've got my act together. Now everyone knows what that means. Well, what does it mean? It means that everything's come into alignment, including the world. And the more you get your act together, level by level, the more the world comes into alignment around you. And if we all did that together, we have no idea how much alignment we could produce. We'd transfigure the world. We would transfigure the world. And then maybe everything that makes us hate the world would disappear. That's the promise of paradise. So, and that's a good place to end.